We all suffer disappointment, fear, pain, and loss. It's a part of what it means to be human. The way in which we respond to these trials can reveal our purpose in life, how we can refocus our feelings about our experiences to benefit others. 10 years ago, I met a lady called Janet in a cafe in Nairobi. She introduced herself by telling me about her role as an early childhood education advisor for a charity working into the slums around the area, and how she came to be in this job. Janet told me that she was born into relative affluence, distanced from the poverty of her neighbours. She trained as an early childhood teacher, working in private schools, which she really enjoyed. She married and had a son. They named him Samuel. One morning, after his first birthday, Janet woke up to discover that her son had somehow managed to get out of his room. Tragically, he had fallen to his death over a balcony. Janet was devastated. Many months later, her grief had not abated, and she fell into depression. One day, she picked up a newspaper with an advert for an early childhood educational advisor to work in the slums. Against her instincts and feelings, for some reason she applied for the job and was appointed. On the first day of her new job, as her car bumped across the mud ruts leading to the broken down shanty town for the first time, she fought her emotions. Arriving at the school building, she opened the door, and as she entered, a small boy was standing on his own in front of her, crying, with his hands raised towards her. She instinctively reached down and picked him up to cuddle him. He nestled in and immediately stopped crying. At that moment, the principal of the school appeared and said, "Hello, you must be Janet, and I see you've met Samuel." Janet was overcome by her feelings. At the next 3 schools she visited, as she entered each building, a child would reach out to her for comfort and settle as soon as she picked them up. Janet felt that out of her distress, she had been called to ease the pain of others. I was moved by her story. In reply, I told her, "My first son died from cot death aged 9 months, and he is the reason I dedicate my life to others through early childhood teaching. And my son's name was Samuel." For both of us, the pain of loss is what motivates us to make a difference in the lives of others. The word passion comes from the Latin passionem, meaning suffering or enduring. It is an intense desire for an object for which we are prepared to endure loss, pain, or suffering. For Janet and myself, our grief translated into a visceral sense of disconnection, the pain of loss. But what renders this overwhelming emotion valuable is its projection onto others, to feel and understand their pain, to translate passion into compassion, suffering with. To be effective, compassion has to go beyond mere awareness. It also requires empathy and action. As educators, are we attuned to and aware of young people's possible distress? Can we put ourselves in their place to understand what it feels like to be this child in this situation? And do we act out of our sense of pain to ease the suffering of others? It is generally accepted that teaching is a vocation based on human interaction. The transfer of knowledge from teacher to student and their ability to learn occurs within a relationship. I believe we should be unashamed to call this love. At our core, all of us are asking ourselves, am I worthy of being loved? The children we teach want to know, do you love me? Do you love me as much as the others? Does it depend on my behavior? What we say and do and our attitudes towards each individual answers these questions for them and contributes towards their mental model of the world as loving, affirming, and inclusive, or as a hostile and judgmental place. Which of these is more likely to support effective learning? Our increasing knowledge and understanding of human biology and neuroscience confirms our brains and our body's need for attachment, attunement, and regulation in order for us to thrive. In effect, the science is telling us that our healthy development and well-being depends on love. For our children and young people, love matters. Arguably, it matters more today than it ever did for a generation who've been raised during a pandemic. It is dispiriting to see the way in which aspects of current educational policy continue to overlook this vital foundation. And we have a problem with love, it seems. The ancient Greeks used at least 6 different terms for different types of love, from agape, love for everyone, through to eros, sexual passion. We have only one word with many connotations, not all of them wholly appropriate for the care and education of other people's children. How does society feel about a male teacher loving other people's children, for example? Is it healthy for any of us to express our passion for individual children in terms of loving them? Might some of these notions give rise to suspicion, fear, and even anger? What do we each understand by loving children? Agape or eros? Comfort, usurping a parent's role, or potential abuse? Our notion of what has been termed professional love has been useful in shaping understanding around the safeguarding framework, helping us to identify children's need for warm, supportive relationships within the context of collegiate understanding of appropriate physical and emotional boundaries, as opposed to actions that look and can feel rather odd. I believe it is impossible to perform our role without empathy or concern for the children we are teaching. We don't have to have had children ourselves or to have suffered personal tragedy. We just need to understand what it is to be human, to be able to recognize our emotions and how to identify and connect with the humanity in others. I believe we need a fierce curiosity that sees each and every child, the ebullient, the angry, those who find it impossible to regulate their emotions, and the nonconformists, but also the withdrawn, the shy, the compliant, and the sad. They need us to notice them. We need to know what has happened to them and what it is like to be them. In terms of survival, connection with others is vital. The child who is or believes themselves to be on their own must look to their own defenses for protection. Disengagement can become self-fulfilling, the so-called hard to reach. What might such patterns of protection look like in practice? Recently, I was in conversation with the manager of one of our preschools as the door opened and a 3-year-old boy was ushered in. He had been coming for a while, but he stood hesitantly in the doorway, watching what was going on. He refused to remove his coat or bag. He chose not to join the group being read a story on the mat. His eyes continued to scan the room until finally he proceeded to walk the perimeter of the main room, checking every corner, before returning to his position of safety by the main entrance, prepared for escape. He was on constant high alert. The manager told me that he is the youngest of several siblings. All except him have been taken into care from the family home. It is very likely he will soon be a ward of the care system himself. What must it be like to be this 3-year-old boy? How do we love, support, and value him? Do we just see a child who refuses to join in, or can we relate to his distressed behaviour? Perhaps some of our children need us first and foremost to pick them up and comfort them like Janet did, either literally or metaphorically. I wonder what the policy on giving physical comfort to children is in your organisation, and the justification for it. What does physically distanced compassion look like? Is a sideways hug sufficient? In his poem, The First Dream, Billy Collins invites us to consider the experience of the first man ever to dream, how he might have gone off by himself, waking the next morning and thinking about what happened, how he had gone somewhere without going. Or had it been a woman, how she might appear to be terribly alone. The poem ends, and if you were there to notice this, you might have gone down as the first person to ever fall in love with the sadness of another. When we next enter our teaching space, may we notice each of our Samuels who go off by themselves, who have maybe gone somewhere without going. May we notice those being terribly alone, and might we be the person to fall in love with the sadness of another precious child. May our hearts be a little larger and filled with more compassion, and may this be our consuming passion.